Nice. What time is it? 10:02.
102. Oh, 10:02. Sorry, I can't math.
Oh, that's, um, I guess maybe we can just start with like a little lay of the land. Um, Hello everyone. I'm Angelique. I'll be giving the first panel. And the way that today will work will be like 20 minutes for this project, 20 minutes for JP's project, and then we'll do like 15, 20 minutes of Q&A. And so if questions come up kind of along the way, feel free to throw them into the chat. Or at the Q&A stage, we can have you kind of unmute and hop on camera if you like to ask your questions. Um, we'll also kind of do a very short intro into like what scope is, since it at this point is up until this moment, it has really just been a product of our brain and thoughts. So we are excited that you guys are here kind of supporting it. And I think with that, we'll get started. I think. Sweet. So yeah, hello everyone. As I mentioned, I am Angelique Allen. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Oregon, and I'm going to be telling you about my project, Dreams of a Scientist: Lessons from the Sea, which is a science-based children's book and really plays into this idea of kind of STEM plus art. But before I get kind of too deep into that project, I wanted to just briefly introduce myself. I feel like one of my main personality traits at this point is that I am an octopus researcher. I study specifically their brains, and so here on the left side is a picture of the little octopuses that we work with. And I feel like the kind of science communication, your little like fun fact of today is that their brain actually sits in between their eyes. It doesn't sit up in that like head-like structure that is their mantle and that holds everything but the brain, the ink sac and the stomach and their three hearts, etc. And if you look at the scale bar here, this octopus is really small. It's about the size of your pinky nail. So I spent a lot of time sitting at this microscope, looking at these little guys. Um, Outside of research, or I'd say kind of adjacently to research, but still definitely within science, I'm very passionate about kind of communicating this research. And this is a picture from one of my favorite outreach events that I've done recently, which was called Generations of Cephalopod Scientists. And I kind of talked about the history of cephalopod science and how, thanks to like the giant axon and the squid, we kind of know how action potentials work. And, that was this foundational uh, discovery within neuroscience, and that was thanks to a cephalopod, and then kind of brought it back to like what I'm doing today and tried to have almost this big history lesson. Um, Also, I named it Generations of Cephalopod Scientists because I specifically wanted children who was like fourth to sixth grade level, with their parents coming to this event. And so here is a photo of a kid and their mom doing a squid dissection. And this event was kind of one of the first that I realized how important it is for outreach to include like K through 12, but also kind of hit on support systems, whether that is, parents, babysitters, siblings. I think that it is really essential that they kind of also have an understanding of research and the importance of some of the science, because I know, I guess kind of from personal experience and from parents telling me that, if a second grader comes home and says, I saw a baby octopus in class today because a scientist brought it, and I want to be an octopus scientist when I grow up, that can often be met with this idea of like, that's not a real job. That's, if you want to work with octopuses, you can like work at an aquarium, or if you love science, you can be, a doctor or pharmacist, or there's, kind of the people who are more out in the world and more public facing, when it comes to that. And so I think it's really important that as researchers, we kind of also do that public facing perspective and talk both K through 12 and to their support systems. One way that I have done that in the past is through creating a brewery label and kind of sticking with this idea of putting science where you least expect it. So this was a collaboration that I did with a local brewery in Eugene, where the University of Oregon is. And I bring this up mostly or also because this is kind of how I met the illustrator that I'm working with for the children's book. So this kind of smaller outreach project really jump-started a whole bigger situation that is really growing quick and is really exciting. Uh, So kind of jumping into now, what is this project? It is a picture book for first and second graders, and I kind of hit on that demographic in order to have it be kind of at a level where these children could read the book on their own and still take a lot away from it. But it could also be kind of a like bedtime story where babysitters, parents, are still reading to kids at this age level. So it can still hit on that like support system demographic. Stepping a little more broadly, I'd say that this is a tool that will educate readers on recent marine discoveries. I feel like it is really common in, I guess, almost all fields, but especially when talking about animals, to kind of have these fun facts that were discovered like decades and decades ago, and that are really general. But I think that kind of updating people on more recent discoveries is really fun and exciting and gets new fun facts circulating and highlights new research that people are putting a lot of time towards. And I guess even stepping out more, I think that this is an inclusive project that will highlight 20 scientists, active scientists who are all in different career stages, and they're all from historically excluded groups. So it is both kind of forming a community of these scientists, but then it is also hopefully breaking stereotypes in regards to kind of what a researcher marine researcher in this instance looks like. I feel like the next kind of natural question is why a children's book? And so I guess one of the main reasons I mentioned is because it is hitting that kind of K through 12, that younger demographic, as well as the support systems. It is also a STEAM project, so the science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And I think that STEAM is kind of a really great way to get people to engage with science without fully like realizing that they're engaging with science. They're not sitting down looking at a lecture, but they are just kind of checking out something they think is really cool and beautiful, and you can kind of secretly feed them science as they do that. And one of the last main reasons I chose a children's book is because I really wanted an ability to like package my ideas and ship them anywhere. I grew up in Kansas where there are of course like aquariums, but I wouldn't say that I had really like a passion and love for the ocean just due to the lack of proximity. And that definitely changed when I moved out to Oregon, where that star is. But I really want to be able to kind of package this like love and passion and also provide people who probably aren't encountering marine scientists due to their demographic location, um, with kind of these role models from historically excluded groups that, also might hopefully look like them. Um, and so once I had kind of decided a children's book, there are a whole lots of different ways to make children's books. And so kind of how did I come up with this idea? I guess I should say it definitely started by being inspired by my research on octopuses. I specifically study polarization vision. And so I thought that it would be so cool to have books that are similar to like the 3D books that I read as a kid, but instead of 3D glasses, it'd be like polarized glasses. And you'd be able to like see like an octopus or like a bee or like all these different animals. Um, but this quickly changed once I realized how difficult it is to like make a book, period, let alone make a book that has like filters and accessories. Um, but I also was applying for a grant to kind of get this idea off the ground a little bit and applied to a grant through the Science Communication Research Center at the University of Oregon. And it was a grant that would give you $3,000 kind of for any project that had to do with these 4 points here. One kind of being like climate change and adaptations to the environment. Two kind of being health and health equity. Three being like political based critical reasoning. And four being a disruptive and instructive media and technology. And I was kind of like, oh, I just wanted to make a book about like how animals see. That definitely doesn't fit into any of these. But kind of thinking about, why these restrictions were on the grant, kind of the importance of these four broad topics really made me kind of change the trajectory that the book was going, and it made it less about just research and educating people, but and more about kind of introducing um, scientists from historically excluded groups and making it more this like disruptive media and technology. And I ultimately ended up getting this grant, but at that point, it still kind of felt like it was just an idea. I had money backing this idea, but I didn't have really even a storyline or anything beyond just I'm gonna make a book. And so that was kind of this crucial point where I talked to two students who have recently graduated from UO's marine science program. I talked to Hallie, who was the one that had worked with me for Ninkasi, but I feel like it's really noteworthy to say that like the Ninkasi event where she created that beer label was the first time that she had ever had her art like publicly on display. And she has never really sold her art before, but she's a phenomenal artist. And Annalise here is the co-author of the book, and she was actually working in lab, working studying octopuses with me. And throughout that, we'd have a ton of conversation about marine science and women in STEM and kind of changes that we wanted to see in the field. And so I kind of brought this idea to them saying, I want to make a children's book. I've got about $3,000 to do it, which is very honestly like just enough money to like make a product. And it is really not enough money to like compensate all of the time and effort that we would put into this project. Um, and I guess bring this up kind of in this panel to say that um, I think that being honest with people in that regard, but also kind of talking to them about the impact of like, A, this book could be really big, and I would love to eventually like be able to compensate you for your time and effort. But at this moment, we're really just focused on like the impact that and the message that this can have. And both of these students were really stoked to just kind of be offered the opportunity to make a really large impact. And they were like, yeah, we're not going to do this like for money. Let's just see kind of what we can create out of scraping up little grants. Um, and I point that out because I feel like a lot of people think that if you want to make a big project like this, you need a lot of money and you need to pay everyone that's involved, which ideally you are. But especially when you're getting off the ground, I think that it is okay to rely on your friend's expertise. And I guess this is a point to say I'm obviously not doing this project alone. I'm working with an illustrator, a co-author, and I'm also kind of working with the 20 scientists that are highlighted. And so I wanted to, put them all up here and talk a little bit about how I identified all of these people. And most of it was just kind of through like cold call, Instagram DMing of like there are some of these people who are just, kind of sharing their day-to-day life as marine scientists. Some of them are like full-on influencers. And then some of them are just like PIs that um, people at the marine science program at UO was like, "Oh, I'd really recommend you talk to this person." And I just kind of cold called, emailed all of them, which, kind of had various responses. I think some people were really stoked on the idea. Some people were kind of like, this sounds interesting. I don't have the bandwidth. But I think that this is maybe just another plug to say, like, if you're looking for people to do these big projects with, just posting on social media and like emailing people randomly is a really great way to start. So this is an example of one of the posts that I made of just like, I'm on a mission to redefine what people think a scientist looks like and share awesome facts about the ocean, like kind of who wants to help me type of thing. Um, and then here's an example of the like kind of DM, I guess, that I sent to a ton of people, just introducing myself, saying I'm coming up with this project. I like don't really have any examples to show you right now, but if you want to be a part of this project, I'd love to Zoom more. Please send me an email or send me your email, and I will get you more information. And I am kind of using the same technique also to like gain sponsorship for this book because ultimately, if we want to publish it, we do need to get um, more money, and I would love to get kind of a larger pool of money too, so I can start to compensate the illustrator and the co-author for their time. And so I've done this just by reaching out to like giant companies like Extra Tough and Scuba Pro and just saying like, "Hi, my name's Angelique. I'm a marine scientist. I'm putting together this book." Um, Lots of, you're kind of like a staple within the marine science or the scientific diving community. And I was really selective in who I reached out to, making sure that they kind of had some history of supporting historically excluded groups. And said, I really liked like this blog that you guys do that does highlight historically excluded groups. And so like I would love to talk further. And through that, I'm getting emails like of, this is the contact for our CEO, which is something you like can't find online. Um, a a small point that I wanted to make that I think is important is the idea of like, how do I have time for this project? And one thing that I have been pretty diligent about doing is kind of keeping this project adjacent to my research. And I try to like, I guess kind of by saying adjacent, also keeping them fairly separate. This is definitely a project and idea that I discussed with my PI. And especially when I first got the grant to say, like, this is going to be real. I told him about that. But beyond that, he definitely doesn't get the like weekly updates on what I'm doing here. And I think that I am also in this effort to kind of keep it separate, try to only work on this project during kind of your typical like, you know, lab time, 9 to 5-ish, when other people's schedules kind of demand it. So if I'm like meeting with the CEO of a company, I'm not going to ask them to meet at 8 p.m. But if I'm just like working on text or anything like that for the book, I am kind of doing that at a later time. Um, and I guess again, just kind of emphasizing that I am absolutely not doing this alone. So I'm doing weekly meetings with illustrators and the co-authors, as well as talking to the scientist and getting like fact checks and things like that from them. Um, Here's kind of a small smaller point in regards to how do you actually like plan and create a children's book. And this is my first time doing this. I'm no expert, but I think that it is really essential that you are working with a team that you trust. And so I just wanted to throw out this little example of like, this is what I am giving our illustrator. I am like coming up with the text and then I am screenshotting pictures and throwing them into a page, very Mod Podge. And she is coming up with beautiful drawings like this, and then painting them to look like this. And so um, I guess I can't really say too much on like how to create these types of illustrations because I'm not the one doing them, but I'd suggest finding someone who does, I suppose. Um, And I guess I wanted to break this out a tiny bit and just run through a quick timeline here at the end. And so in November 2023 is when I first kind of applied to the grant. And I also started talking about like how much does it cost to make a grant with some informal mentors that who are also who are scientists who also wrote children's books. And I connected with them just through cold call email. In January 2024, about a year ago, I actually got the grant. I pitched this idea to the illustrator and co-author. We kind of had this like character development phase where we're thinking like, do we want an octopus or a human to be the main person or those types of questions. In spring and summer, following that, we did a lot of drafts of the text. We looked into these differences between like self-publishing versus going with a publishing company, and did a lot of redefining our storyline. Um, in fall, I was interviewing all of these scientists that I had reached out to and did like 45-minute interviews with them. I then put them all in a Slack so they could also connect through communities. I had my text reviewed by editors and second grade teachers, which are connections that I had made through previous outreach events and contacted sponsors. And then kind of most recently, we are working on website designs, events at science museums. We have completed the sketches and have started illustrating the book. Um, and I guess from there, I would just like to say that you can kind of follow along with this project, both on Instagram, and you can also check out our website, which just went live this week. Um, and maybe like two main takeaways that I hope that you can take from this project is A, that you do not have to have kind of the skills to like perfectly execute a giant idea. You can have the idea and have a handful of the skills, and then you can kind of grow a team that can supplement the skills that you don't have. And this is maybe more of a personal opinion, but I think that you kind of need to completely redo something two or three times before it is good. And that simply takes time. So, like this children's book, I've already been at it for about a year. And I think in totality, to go from idea to creation, it'll be close to a year and a half. So, all good things take time. Um, and yeah, with that, I see that there are a lot of questions in the chat, which is awesome, and we'll be addressing those at the end. And yeah, I'm excited to hear about JP's project.